thank you. Not only has Harvard given me an extraordinary honor, but the weeks of fear and nausea I have endured at the thought of giving this commencement address has made me lose weight. A win-win situation. Now, all I have to do is take deep breaths, squint at the red banners, and convince myself that I am at the world's largest Gryffindor reunion. Actually, I've wrapped my mind and heart about what I want to say to you today. I've asked myself what I wish I'd known at my own graduation and what important lessons I've learned between the 21 years that have expired between that day and this. I have come up with two answers. On this wonderful day, when we're gathered together to celebrate your academic success, I want to tell you about the benefits of failure. And now, as you stand on the threshold of what is sometimes called real life, I want to extol the crucial importance of imagination. These may seem quixotic or paradoxical choices, but please bear with me. Looking back at the 21-year-old self of me is a slightly uncomfortable experience for the 42-year-old she has become. Half my lifetime ago, I was striking an uneasy balance between the ambition I had for myself and what those closest to me expected of me. I was convinced that the only thing I wanted to do ever was to write novels. However, my parents thought of my overactive imagination as an amusing personal work that would never pay a mortgage or secure a pension. They wanted me to take a vocational degree. I wanted to study English literature. A compromise was made, which in retrospect satisfied nobody, and I was going to study modern languages. Hardly had my parents' car rounded the corner at the end of the road when I did German and scuttled down for the classics corridor. I cannot remember telling my parents that I was studying classics. They might have found out for the first time on graduation day. What I feared most at your age was not poverty but failure. At your age, in spite of having a distinct lack of motivation at university, where I had spent far too long in the coffee bar writing stories and far too less at lectures, I had a knack for passing examination, and that, for years, was the measure of success in my life and that of my peers. However, the fact that you graduated from Harvard suggests that you are not very well acquainted with fear. You might be driven by a fear of failure as much as a desire for success. Indeed, conception of failure might not be too far from an average person's idea of success. So high have you already flown? A mere 7 years after my graduation day, I had failed on an epic scale. I was jobless, a lone parent, and as poor as it was possible to be in modern Britain without being homeless. The fears that my parents had for me and that I had for myself had both come to pass, and by every usual standard, I was the biggest failure I knew. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you that failure is fun. That period of my life was a dark one, and I didn't know that there was going to be. So why do I talk about the benefits of failure? Simply because failure is the stripping away of the innocence. I stopped pretending to myself that I was anything other than what I was, and began to direct all my energy in the one work that mattered to me. Had I really succeeded at something else, I might have never found the determination to succeed in the one area I was convinced I truly belonged to. I was set free because my greatest fear had been realized, and I was still alive had a daughter whom I adored, and I had an old typewriter and a big idea. And so rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life. You might never fail on the scale I did, but some failure in life is inevitable. It's impossible to live without failing at something unless you live so cautiously that you might have not lived at all, in which case you fail by default. Failure gave me an inner security about myself that I had never attained by passing examination. Failure taught me things about myself that I could have done no other way. Failure taught me that I had a strong will and more discipline than I suspected. I also found out that I had friends whose value was truly above the price of rubies. You will never know yourself, the strength of your relationships, until both have been tested by adversity. Such knowledge is a true gift for all that it is painfully won, and it has been worth more than any qualification I've ever earned. So, given a time turner, I would tell my 21-year-old self that your qualifications, your CVs, are not your life, though you will meet many people of my age and older who confuse you too. One of the greatest experiences of my life preceded Harry Potter. Though it's subsequently told of what I wrote in those books, it came in the form of my earliest day jobs. Though I was sloping off to write stories in my lunch hours, I paid rent in my early 20s by working at the Amnesty International African Department in London. Every day of my working week in my early 20s, I was reminded how incredibly fortunate I was to live in a country with a democratically elected government where public trial and legal representation were the right for all. One of the many things I learned down the classics corridor I ventured was something I could not define. Written by the Greek author Plutarch, what we achieve inwardly will change outer reality. This is an astonishing statement, and yet proven 1,000 times every day of our lives. It expresses, in part, our inescapable connection with the outside world, how we touch other people's life simply by existing. But how much more are you, Harvard graduates of 2008, likely to touch other people's life? Your intelligence, your capacity for hard work, the intelligence you have earned and received set you apart. They give you unique status and unique responsibilities. Even your nationality sets you apart. The great majority of you belong to the world's only remaining superpower. The way you protest, the pressure you bring on your government, the way you live has an impact beyond your borders. This is your privilege and your burden. You choose to use your influence and status to raise your voice on behalf of those who have no voice. If you choose to identify yourself not only with the powerful but with the powerless, if you choose to retain your ability to imagine yourself into the place of those who do not have the advantages, then it will not only be your proud family, but thousands and millions of more people whose reality you have helped change. You do not need magic to change the world. You carry all the power inside yourselves already. I'm nearly finished. I have one last hope for you, which is something that I already had at 21. The friends with whom I saw on graduation day have been my friends for life. They have been the people towards whom I have been able to turn in times of trouble. They have been my children's godparents and people who have been kind enough to not sue me when I took their names for death eaters. So today, I wish you nothing better than similar friendships. And tomorrow, even if you remember not a single word of mine, I hope that you remember those of Seneca. As is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is.